Thank you, Madam President. Like my colleagues before, I would like to extend my best wishes to Senator Aziz, and I hope that he gets well, and I wish his family the very best as well. Madam President, I rise to respond to the Appropriation Bill 2024-2025, dubbed Building Our Infrastructure for a Resilient Economy, as presented by the Prime Minister and Leader of Government Business. It is with profound disappointment that I have sat here year after year, Madam President, in this august chamber, witnessing the blatant manipulations by the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, in his delivery of these budget statements. Crafted, Madam President, with misleading eloquence, he parades before the House a series of hollow phrases designed to mislead the public and placate chosen demographics. Yet, he utterly fails to offer substantial plans or actionable content for the true advancement of our people. Madam President, sadly, I'm from Super, not library. Madam President, sadly, this year's presentation by the Prime Minister is no different. It is strewn with lofty watchwords and phrases such as truthful account, virtue of truth, value of truth in enabling public enlightenment, plans rooted in principles of accountability. Madam President, these fancy phrases and watchwords are not manifested in the substance of the Prime Minister's budget address. On the contrary, it is littered with untruths, false assumptions, and questionable statistics. Madam President, my presentation today will prove beyond doubt that this budget is nothing more than a make-believe budget, in which the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance has unashamedly attempted to give the people of St. Lucia a 6 for a 9. Madam President, this budget was definitely not created to address the formidable challenges and the desperate needs of the people of St. Lucia of today and beyond. Madam President, we are a people whose dreams and aspirations are to compete and thrive in this highly complex and competitive global environment. Madam President, we are citizens of a global community at a critical juncture when our people face monumental challenges in a world of sophisticated information technology. A global community, Madam President, plagued by the existential threat of climate change, water contamination, human rights violations, rising crime, global health issues, poverty, poor access to healthcare, education, and safety, rising cost of food, Madam President, hunger, illegal drugs, human trafficking, violent crime, and the proliferation of weapons and regional wars. This budget, Madam President, fails miserably short of addressing these present, pressing, and critical needs of today. Madam President, no amount of verbosity and slick penmanship from the Prime Minister's wordsmith can alter the truth. The truth is, this make-believe budget is definitely not a 9, it is certainly a cunningly disguised 6.
That's correct.
Madam President, in his statement on page 3, section 2, subheading of our record, the Prime Minister made a brash proclamation. As a precondition for reshaping the country, and I quote, We have stabilized the finances of the country and placed the public debt on a sustainable path. The question we all should ask, Madam President, whether this is true. When this government came into office, Madam President, our country was steadily emerging from the deep, murky waters of financial and economic turbulence created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Like every other country in the world, our GDP contracted by over 24%, Madam President. Madam President, between June 2020 and July 2021, the UWP administration placed our financial and economic future on a solid upward trajectory through a comprehensive, pioneering, ingenious, and strategic economic and social recovery plan. In 2021, the economy registered a growth rate, a recovery rate, if you want to say it, of 11.5%, second only to Guyana, a country with vast petroleum resources, Madam President. In 2022, the growth grew to 20%, Madam President. These rates, Madam President, and we all can agree to, could have been much higher had the government's vision not been stymied by a severe malaise diagnosed as partisan politics myopia, also known as PPM, Madam President. A condition, Madam President, PPM, that afflicts petty, vindictive, and short-sighted politicians consumed by a wicked desire to victimize supporters of the opposition. PPM. Mr. Vice President, in their quest to exact pain and trouble, this administration stopped or interminably delayed almost $1 billion of ongoing and shovel-ready infrastructure projects. In the process, Mr. Vice President, they catapulted thousands of St. Lucians into unemployment, creating unnecessary hardship in hundreds of households. These reckless stoppages confined hundreds of trucks and heavy equipment to makeshift parking lots to rot. It denied the economy the opportunity to optimize the momentum that it was developing as a result of the impetus created by the construction component of the UWP administration's economic and social recovery plan. This administration, Mr. Vice President, stopped construction on several roads under the $150 million National Road Rehabilitation Program, the largest national road rehabilitation initiative in the history of this country. Madam President, Mr. Vice President, this Labour Party administration terminated the St. Jude Hospital Project Phase 2, stopping construction on the brand new purpose-built, climate-resilient modern building. This UWP and Labour Party administration stopped the all-important $400 million Iwanara International Airport project, as well as the essential $15 million Rodney Bay Road Rehabilitation Project, an artery in the heart of our main residential, tourism, and commercial hub. This administration, Mr. Vice President, stopped the tavern and shock housing developments, both private and public sector collaborations. In so doing, denying scores of St. Lucians, especially young St. Lucians, an opportunity to grow wealth through the ownership of a plot of land and a house at a reasonable price in this country. Mr. Vice President, I would like to continue listing the projects stopped by this administration, but the time allotted for my presentation today is inadequate and does not permit me to do so. Secondly, Mr. Vice President, the mere exercise of delineating the projects started by the previous UWP administration and sabotaged by this administration breaks my heart when I think of the thousands of St. Lucians who had to suffer unnecessarily as a result of this callous act by this SLP regime. Mr. Vice President, I am sure you will agree with me that had this administration not stopped these projects and had they brought them to completion within the time and cost set in the terms and conditions of the contracts, our economy would have recovered faster. The financial hardship experienced by many in the last 3 years would have been less severe, and the social degradation pervading through our nation today would have been less menacing. Mr. Vice President, in 2023, our economy registered a meager 2.2% GDP growth, a precipitous drop of 18.2 points from 2022. And you can refer to the Economic and Social Review, page 11, table 3, Mr. Vice President. Our growth, Mr. Vice President, was the worst in the OECS, in the ECCU. The worst. Mr. Vice President, can you imagine what a disaster this is? St. Lucia, the worst performing economy in the OECS, in the ECCU. That is what the record shows. That is what the record shows. Okay? In the Economic and Social Review. St. Lucia in the ECCU. St. Lucia in its heyday was the beacon of economic success in the OECS. We now suffer the ignominy of having the worst economy. Shameful, especially when one considers this did not have to be if this government had not tampered with the working formula left by the previous UWP administration. Can you imagine, Mr. Vice President, St. Lucia performing worse than Grenada? Worse than Dominica?
Unimaginable.
Worse than St. Vincent?
Unimaginable.
Worse than Antigua? Worse than St. Kitts? We are the bottom.
That's right.
We are the bottom, Mr. Vice President. Okay? Madam President, Vice President, those statistics are captured on page 11 of the 2023 Social and Economic Review, table 3. Macroeconomic indicators 2022-2023.
I think they've read it. I don't think they've read it.
These are your words. You all put it there, you know.
Pilot stuff from the lower house.
This is the Economic and Social Review 2023. These are your words.
Check it.
Right there. Page 11.
Check it. Find the page.
The average real GDP growth in the ECCU was 4.3%.
That's right.
4.3%, the average real GDP growth. The real GDP growth in St. Lucia of 2.2%, Mr. Vice President, is almost half of the average performance of the member states of the ECCU.
Find the page.
I am not the one saying it. Y'all said it. It's in there. Unbelievable. And St. Kitts and Nevis, 2.3%. Grenada, 3.6%. Antigua and Barbuda, 3.9%. Dominica, 4.7%. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 6%. Mr. Vice President, can you believe that St. Vincent's real GDP growth rate was almost 200% greater than that of St. Lucia? These are the facts. These are the facts. Madam President, Mr. Vice President, the first rule in programming is, if it is working, do not touch it.
That's right. That's right.
If it is working, do not touch it.
That's right.
The track record of this government cries out that it does not adhere to the rules. It played petty partisan politics mixed with T-boutique economic policies with our economy, and the people paid. The people are paying, and unfortunately will continue to pay from their pockets through crippling taxes, exorbitant excise duties, extortion like fuel and cooking gas prices, and high inflation. Of course, I will expand on later in my presentation, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, the record also shows that our economy was the worst performing economy in the ECCU in 2023. It therefore follows that this Prime Minister, this government, they are the worst economic managers of the ECCU. Simple as that. That is the only record you all have there.
Case closed.
Don't come over records with it, this or that. No, this is your record. You all are the worst economic managers of the ECCU. At the bottom of the ladder, at 2.3%. undisputed. That is what it is. And that you all have betrayed the trust and confidence which the people of St. Lucia placed in you all to run the affairs of this country. It's a betrayal because you all promised to do better.
Can't manage.
But you all have taken us to the very bottom of the ladder today.
Can't manage.
That is your record. That is the real record. So the poorest of the poor, that is what you all have done to them. You all have betrayed them. Madam President, Mr. Vice President, I cringed in astonishment when I heard our Prime Minister boast that his administration has placed our country's public debt on a sustainable path. Mr. Vice President,
What?
the 2023 Economic and Social Review gives a completely different account. A dismal story of extraordinarily high borrowings and poor debt management by this administration. I remember the days when I sat in the House of Parliament in the lower house and listened to the opposition call the Tuesday sittings as Madipwete. They accused the former administration of reckless borrowing and mismanagement of the country's finances. Mr. Vice President, today I am shocked to learn that this administration, this Labour Party administration, grew the public debt of this country by an additional $388.4 million by the end of December 2023. This, Mr. Vice President, represents an increase of 8.8%. 8.8% increase in the borrowing at the end of December 2023. This high level of borrowing by this administration has caused a corresponding increase in the debt to GDP ratio up to 72.9% at the end of December 2023 from 69.8% in December 2022. And you can look at the Economic and Social Review, page 64, central government debt. Mr. Vice President, our debt to GDP ratio has once again entered very uncomfortable territory under a Labour St. Lucia Labour Party administration. Last year, Mr. Vice President, St. Lucia's debt repayment increased by a whooping 17.2%. 17.2% to a gigantic $341.3 million. $341.3 million. It's in the Economic and Social Review. Not me, not my figures, not my words. This means that the taxpayers of this country, Mr. Vice President, are obligated to repay $27,608,343.43 per month, or almost $1 million a day in debt repayment. That's what it means. Mr. Vice President, with our limited liquidity, this high debt servicing obligation places additional pressures on the government's already fragile cash flow. The result is less available financial resources to fix our roads, less available finances to provide our farmers with the assistance that they so desperately need to produce quality produce to consistently satisfy local demand and our export aspirations. Less available financial resources to fight crime, less financial resources to improve our education system, maintain our schools, and increase access to education. Fewer resources to develop and market our vital tourism industry. Less financial resources for the effective operation of our health facilities, Mr. Vice President. Hence the reason why there is always a shortage of basic medication and essential equipment in our hospitals and primary health facilities all over the country. In other words, less resources to invest in the social and economic development of our country.
It's true. It's true.
Mr. Vice President,
No, we're talking about
is this what the Prime Minister characterizes as placing our debt on a sustainable path? In 2023, this government has borrowed at a rate 4 times the rate of GDP growth.
Wow.
4 times.
Wow.
8.8% increase. Their growth is 2.2. 4 times. So far this year, in less than 4 months, this government has borrowed approximately $300 million. Is this sustainable? Is this sustainable? Madam President, this statement by the Prime Minister is another facade, cleverly constructed to mislead the people of St. Lucia. A proverbial 6 for a 9. As I stated earlier in my presentation, this budget is a maze of falsehoods, baseless assumptions, and manipulated statistics, tools of deception used to fabricate a facade of competence and care.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Mr. Vice President, I want to discuss the heartless effects of this administration's policies.
There's a catch.
Mr. Vice President, the people and businesses of St. Lucia continue to flounder from the devastating effects of high inflation and spiraling cost of living. While the Prime Minister portends that his policies and interventions are shielding the population from the effects of high inflation, the reality on the ground is that the impact of this government's piecemeal policies to ameliorate the situation are wholly ineffective and utterly inadequate as remedies. Mr. Vice President, it is a widely accepted fact that high energy prices directly impact inflation rates and overall economic performance. High energy prices burden businesses and restrict their growth potential and profitability. Additionally, they can place a strain on households, affecting disposable income and consumer spending. Therefore, affordable energy prices provide a solid foundation, Mr. Vice President, for fostering a resilient and prosperous economy. Madam Vice President, with this in mind, I am dumbfounded as to why this administration has forced St. Lucians to pay such high prices for petroleum products. St. Lucians pay some of the highest prices for fuel, for gas, diesel, and cooking gas in the OECS, and that is as per the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank website. Mr. Vice President, in June 2022, the price of a gallon of Brent crude oil was approximately US $122. As a result, the government of St. Lucia adjusted the price of a gallon of gas to $17.95, the highest price ever in the history of this country. Highest. By December 2022, the average price of a barrel of Brent crude oil on the international market had plummeted by US $40 to US $80.92. Unconscionably, this uncaring government, Mr. Vice President, forced St. Lucians to pay $17.70 a gallon at the pump, a reduction of only 25 cents.
Wow. Insignificant.
Wow.
A reduction of 25 cents from $122 to $80.92, over $40 saved, you only remove 25 cents.
Wow.
Mr. Vice President,
They care.
this administration did not pass on the savings derived from the decrease in price to the consumer. People are already struggling under the burden of high prices and inflation. This, in my mind, Mr. Vice President, is extortion of the pockets of the people of St. Lucia. Extortion.
To the fullest.
Is anybody hoping that change this?
If this government was serious about shielding the people from high prices and inflation, by now it would have set the price of gas below $14 a gallon. Why are St. Lucians, Mr. Vice President, still paying $16.50 for a gallon of gas? Why? The answer, Mr. Vice President, lies in the statistics found in the last paragraph of page 56, and the first paragraph of page 57 of the Social and Economic Review. And it reads, and I quote, "This strong performance,"
The Gospel and
This strong performance was occasioned by an almost doubling of excise tax receipts on petroleum products to $68.7 million, owing to higher excise tax rates and larger volumes coupled with lower subsidy on LPG cooking gas.
You have to read that part.
I'm going to read it again.
Yeah, read that part.
I'm going to read it again for people to understand. This strong performance was occasioned by an almost doubling of excise tax receipts on petroleum products to $68.7 million. Doubling excise tax on the backs of the people of St. Lucia, owing to higher excise tax rates and larger volumes coupled with lower subsidy on LPG cooking gas. So you have collected more in excise tax, but you have lowered the subsidy on cooking gas. The excise tax rates on gasoline and diesel per gallon, Mr. Vice President, rose from an average of $2.56, that's diesel, and that's gasoline, and $1.69 respectively in 2022-2023 to $3.64, that's gasoline, and $3.90 in 2023-2024 respectively.
Wow. Wow.
The 20 pound,
Have a drink, man. You deserve a drink of water. Have a drink. Have a drink. Have a drink. You deserve that.
the 20 pound subsidy, cooking gas that is, decreased from $19.24 per cylinder in 2022-23 to $16.16 in 2023-2024. So they have doubled the excise tax rates, the revenue, and they have reduced the subsidy to make it more expensive for consumers. Mr. Vice President, these statistics expose the inequitable and dissolute character of this administration. Madam President, Mr. Vice President, this uncaring government, they made approximately $34 million more from excise tax in 2023 than it made in 2022.
That's right.
Yet it did not use $1 towards reducing the price of gas, diesel, or cooking gas. Mr. Vice President, the government made an additional $1.08 more on a gallon of gas in 2023 than it made in 2022. Yet the government did not use these savings to reduce the price of gas. The government made $2.21 more on a gallon of diesel in 2023 than it made in 2022. Yet this government did not use the savings to reduce the price of diesel. And to make it worse, this government reduced the subsidy on the 20 pound cylinder of gas by $3.08, causing the price of cooking gas to be unnecessarily high.
Senator Stanislas, you have 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay. Mr. Vice President, are these the actions of a government that is putting the people first? Is this the action of a fair and caring government? Are these policies geared toward shielding the population from the ravages of high inflation and rising prices? Are these the types of policies that will drive the economy, empower industries, and create jobs? Mr. Vice President, the answer to all of these questions is a resounding no.
No.
Is this government deliberately maintaining the gas prices high so that it could redistribute the additional monies collected to the cronies, the friends, the inner circle of the Labour Party at the expense of the poorest in this country? Is that what it is? Mr. Vice President, I believe this government is putting the majority of the people through financial hardship to fill the cups of a select few.
Yes.
I am convinced that this government is utilizing the budget as a weapon to protect the victory at the expense of the majority of the people.
We can agree to disagree. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President, if the Prime Minister and his administration were serious about cushioning the impact of inflation and the rising cost of goods and services, do you think he would have reduced the subsidy on bread to cause the bakers to ask for a hike in the price of bread? Do you think he would have kept the price of gas high to cause the minibus drivers to demand a hike in the bus fares? Mr. Vice President, this government has collected the most revenue in a year, more than any other government in the history of this country. Why did he not use some of the record tax revenue to offset these increases? Are these actions of a caring government?
No.
Are these the policies of a government that is shielding people from the high cost of living and inflation?
No.
Mr. Vice President, the answer is a resounding no. It is a betrayal of the trust that the people of St. Lucia, a betrayal of the trust that they placed in you in 2021. Because you had every means of reducing the price of fuel, every means of reducing the price of cooking gas. You should have never allowed bus fares to go up. You should have never allowed the price of bread to go up. But no, Mr. Greedy Joe, take it from the pockets of the people. Extort the pockets of the people of St. Lucia. At the expense of whom?
Protecting their victory.
Mr. Vice President, the great Kofi Annan, the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations, said, knowledge is power. Information is liberating. Education is the premise of progress in every society, in every family. The financial pressures of today have made it very difficult, Mr. Vice President, for many parents to afford access to education for the children. One of the many interventions devised by the UWP administration was the school transportation subsidy program, Mr. Vice President. During the 1997 to 2006 Labour Party administration, this program was stopped. The UWP introduced the program in 2007 and again expanded the program during the last UWP administration. Mr. Vice President, the Prime Minister in his budget address declared, we therefore need an educational system that is accessible. That is on page 60, paragraph 2 of the Social and Economic Review. But sorry, Mr. Vice President, but page 60, paragraph 2 of the Social and Economic Review. That's what he said in his budget speech. But page 60 of the Economic and Social Review reveals that the government has decreased the school bus subsidy. They have reduced it.
Why?
This is the time when the government should have increased the subsidy, not decrease it. You have collected so much revenue. You have refused to pass on the savings of the fuel, the cooking gas to the people. You have increased bus fares. You have raised the price of bread on the people. And you are reducing the school transportation subsidy. Heartless, uncaring. Mr. Vice President, the reduction of the subsidy could have many deleterious repercussions.
That's right.
Some parents may no longer be able to afford to send their children to school, potentially resulting in increased delinquency. Many persons come to me all over the place. They want them to put their child on a bus to go to school. They cannot afford to pay a private bus. You know? I tell them, go to the principal. They cannot get any solution. Go to the ministry. until the economic and social review is revealing that this government, they have cut the school transportation subsidy. That is the budget. That is the budget. The reduction in the program could increase the incidence of students loitering in trouble zones. And Mr. Vice President, this is heart-wrenching. To cut the school transportation subsidy, this is a betrayal of the young people of St. Lucia.
That's right. That's right.
It is a betrayal. And the Minister of Education, my good friend from Denver North, he needs to give the people of St. Lucia an answer. Let them know why the school transportation subsidy was cut. He needs to.
Mr. President, I think the member is misleading the House.
Sorry, yes. Senator Antoine?
He speaks on bus subsidies for students being cut. The reality is the school population has dropped. And it is not a case where we have, in the school, the secondary school system, the subsidy has always been for the most vulnerable students, not for everybody. And it seems people are speaking here as if the program was always for everybody. It's for the most vulnerable students. Okay? And parents apply for school subsidies. And I do not think that it is a case where the ministry has been rejecting parents. So I think the member is misleading the House.
Thank you. Please, Senator, please continue. Thank you.
Madam Senator, you've just admitted that the subsidy has been cut, you know. That's what you've done.
It has not been cut. It has not been cut. That's not what you call cut.
You've answered the question, but it is right there in the Economic and Social Review. Page 60, paragraph 2. It is right there. It is right there.
So you give a rationale.
Mr. Vice President, it would be remiss of me to not speak about the secret deal between the government of St. Lucia and Global Ports Holdings. The Prime Minister in his presentation, page 7, number 16, referred to the GPH arrangement as a landmark development. Mr. Vice President, I would like the Prime Minister to explain to the nation what benefit is it to St. Lucia to lease our major ports of Castries and Soufrière to a foreign company, the same foreigners they demonized for up to 40 years, in the process giving away projected revenue of approximately $700 million. In return,
Mr. President, Vice President, on a point of order, the member is misleading the House.
Just now, hold on. We had a whole how to do a point of order. You put on your light, let me acknowledge you, and then...
Oh, sorry.
Senator Jawahir?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. On a point of order, the member is misleading the House.
Please explain.
The member indicated that the agreement is for 40 years, and that is incorrect. The agreement is for 30 years with a possible extension of 10 years. So we need to be precise in stating in this honorable House what the fact is. And I wanted to educate the member opposite.
Thank you, Stanislas. Well, with the new information, can you...
Mr. Vice President, it's the same thing. Everything is left to speculation by this government, you know. They talk of transparency, accountability, but you have to speculate. You hear in 40 years, you hear in 30 years. Now the honorable member is saying 30 years with 10 years to renew. Everything has been left to speculation. But the fact is, we are losing approximately $700 million in return for an investment of only $150 million. That is the fact. That is the fact. Mr. Vice President, this is a lopsided deal, totally in favor of GPH and their friends and associates.
That's correct.
Mr. Vice President, this government preaches transparency at every opportunity, yet it refuses to disclose information pertinent to this arrangement. Mr. Vice President, something is very fishy with this agreement.
That's correct.
Very fishy. Where is the transparency? The people have a right to know. Ultimately, the people of St. Lucia are the losers in this deal, and foreigners, friends, and the inner circle of the Labour Party are the winners. That's what it is. How much time? How much time, Mr. Vice President?
So you have 5 minutes.
Mr. Vice President, what is going on with our agriculture industry today?
Chaos.
The Prime Minister's address was virtually silent on this vital sector.
Yes.
I was at pains to find anything on the industry, including the state of bananas in the speech. Mr. Vice President, as I scrutinized the speech, I found this lonely sentence which stuck out like a sore thumb. It reads, Mr. Speaker, while the export of bananas to the United Kingdom no longer plays a major role in agriculture production, a vibrant and viable market exists in the region. Exports to the region. Mr. Vice President, this Prime Minister is the master of understatements. The reason why the government is so quiet about agriculture is because they know that the future, that the farmers of St. Lucia are suffering. They have nothing to smile about. This Minister of Agriculture and this government has failed the farmers.
Miserably.
The only way I can describe the state of agriculture in this country is to say it all fall down. Goodbye, finish. Mr. Vice President, if one is brave enough to read pages 32 and 33 of the Social and Economic Review, one will learn of the carnage that has taken place in that vital industry, the carnage that has taken place in this vital industry. Mr. Vice President, I will make this horror story short. Based on preliminary estimates, the sector's real value declined by 17%. By 17%. Banana production fell by 45.5%, historic low.
Wow.
Banana exports fell by 55.4%.
Wow.
Banana exports to the UK market fell to its lowest level ever. Non-banana crops fell by 15.2%.
All sectors.
Non-banana crops sold to supermarkets fell by 17.3%. Mr. Vice President, livestock, eggs, vegetables, fruits, everything has either dropped, fallen down, or declined. Mr. Vice President, I think you will agree with me when I say the agriculture industry and bananas have taken a high fall under the stewardship of this government. It is evident that the minister responsible for that sector needs to be reassigned as a matter of urgency. Mr. Vice President, I heard some talk from the Minister of Agriculture about bringing new bloodline of livestock to St. Lucia, but I want to inform him that the only two beings that can save the farmers now are divine intervention and the return of the United Workers' Party administration to govern this country. That is what can save the farmers of St. Lucia.
They know it.
In closing, Mr. Vice President, I know my time is almost up. These are the dire times in St. Lucia today. These are dire times in St. Lucia today. St. Lucians have to endure a government which continuously peddles lies and half-truths. Violent crime is on a rampage without abatement, despite the recent creation of a new Ministry of Crime Prevention and the appointment of a new minister. To make matters worse, the Prime Minister, the Minister for National Security and Home Affairs, has thrown the towel in the ring and finally admitted that he is at his wit's end. Mr. Vice President, if he is not fit to do the job, then he should step aside and allow one who is better qualified, one who has proven his competence in governing this country, to take over. If the kitchen is too hot, he should get out of the kitchen. The people of this country are struggling. They are experiencing financial hardship. But this greedy Joe government is not concerned. It does not care about the welfare of the people, Mr. Vice President. This year's budget giveaways are like the colorful trinkets that Christopher Columbus and his pirates gave to the Amerindians when they first visited and later plundered these beautiful, lush green isles of the Caribbean Sea. Madam President, Mr. Vice President, sorry, this country is in a mess. Most St. Lucians know that. the government has failed the people of this country. They fooled them in a position with their lies and propaganda, and now in governance. I'm wrapping up, yes. Yeah.
You have 1 minute. 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll wrap up 1 minute. So, Vice President, on that note of propaganda, it delighted me to hear a very learned member of this SLP administration in his contribution to this budget in the lower house acknowledge, and I quote, that sometimes in politics, some governments are way ahead of their time, and sometimes they do things at a certain point in time and are rejected, and somehow later, in the movement of history, the value is understood. End of quote. And as I listen to these statements, I could not help but be reminiscent that whilst the government of the day indicates that this is the year of infrastructure, it is the same group of individuals in opposition who opposed the development of the country during the past 5 years.
Time. That's your time. That's your time.
What time?
Yes, your time is up.
Mr. Vice President, respectfully, it is for the many reasons which I have outlined in good conscience that I cannot and will not support this motion as presented by the Leader of Government Business. I thank you.